Hello and welcome to the Agile Uprising. This is a unscripted show. I'm joined with Chris Murman and Jay Hrcsko. Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
Yes, it
Uh,
is.
there was a pause. They were like, is he talking to me, gentlemen? Yeah, talking to me.
Yeah, loose definition of that term.
So we're going to try something we've never done before. Oh, we do this all the time. Unscripted. What's on your mind? And each of us will propose a topic. We can tap into it a little bit with the usual what else, what else, what else. What's the challenge and what do you want it to be like? And we'll see where it goes. Do we have a volunteer? That's something top of mind who wants to launch
Go ahead,
the
Jay.
first trial balloon. Okay, we
So,
just voted.
yeah. All right. So I'll go first. So the thing that's been rattling around in my brain, right, is we're obviously in a time of upheaval. And it's very, very easy. Those of us who are cynics, those of us who can be pessimistic, right? Realist, what is it? The optimist says the glass is half full. The pessimist says the glass is half empty. The realist says this is pee, right? Half full, half empty. This is pee. I'm drinking. But I was actually thinking this morning I came across this quote by the composer Gustav Mahler, who said, tradition is not the worship of ashes, but the preservation of fire. And I think right now, what we're going through industry wise is we're going through a giant moment of fire, right? It literally is the phoenix rising. What does the phoenix look like rising from the ashes? I guess is my question. Because with all the doom and gloom, and I got to say, I'm going to say this publicly, they're never going to hire me. Sorry. LinkedIn has become a negative recursive cesspool. There's not a lot of people challenging others to elevate their game, lift up, go positive. Like, how do we work? How do we work together to get through this trying time? It's easy. It's easy to take pot shots, right? And I started to ask myself before I post karmically, would I want this to come back on me? And if the answer is no, I find myself deleting way more posts than younger Jay would have normally made. And tying this to our world, I think there's a lot of opportunity right now. And I think there's a lot of opportunity with the obvious crumbling, right? The dissolution of what we're seeing. There is an opportunity there to truly create a new phoenix and make it rise from the ashes. And I'd love to hear you guys' thoughts about what are some of the options here.
Yeah, so I'm curious the context. And I want to make the assumption, but I want to clarify it that you want to talk about what we do as coaches and consultants in the Agile world, because my mind is going to last night's conversation. Well, who knows when we release this? The the lovely CNN quote debate, right? Are you talking about democracy crumbling, the
Oh no,
climate crumbling? I
we're
mean,
going
how
to
deep do
avoid
you want to go?
the
Let's
Cheeto
bring it in, Jay.
Mussolini and Mr. Biden, and Mr. Biden goes to war.
Well,
We're not gonna talk about any of that stuff.
Okay.
here's what I heard.
Highlight of the debate, by the way, is two old men on stage arguing about their golf handicap, because arguably that's where they both should be, is on the golf course. No, I'm talking about, like, I that's a good way to enable and constrain it, right? To taper it. Coaching. What is the role of coaching? What is the role of Agile in the world going forward?
So
And while everybody's talking about crumbling, I think, what's the old Warren Buffett quote? You buy when everybody else is selling, and you sell when everybody else is buying. Or,
yeah,
or what the opposite. I totally fucked that up. But
now let me give what I think I heard Jay saying is that I feel like I heard Jay saying, how are we viewing the fire? Right? Because you started with preserving fire, as I think
yeah,
I heard you
yeah,
say, is
yeah.
like how to like are we admiring the fire and be like, oh look, that's on fire. Oh look at that thing burn, which is what a lot of us do when we see fire trucks, is like, oh look at that burn. And rubberneck our way along. I feel like that's what I hear Jay saying, that LinkedIn is people admiring the fire as opposed to trying to preserve the flame.
Um,
And I mean, is that too Pollyanna-ish
no,
of
no,
me?
no. You're close. It's more of, we have a very large vocal contingent of our people looking at the fire, and they're saying, "Oh no, there is a fire. Oh no, there's a fire. This is terrible. This is
I
terrible."
don't think they're saying, oh no. I think they're saying, look at that fire.
Uh,
Isn't that lovely? People are so
so
many people
maybe
are saying, I called it. Look at this. I said this. I wrote this. People are trying to say I was right. Look at that fire. That's what I feel like I
what
read.
I then I would agree with you. Yes, and what I guess, so I'm going to build on that and say my thesis is, while there's some people who are saying, "Well, look at this fire. I knew this was going to happen," and there are other people bemoaning the act of fire itself. My optimistic part thinks this is the fire. There should be a contingent of us that's looking at the fire and sees only opportunity. Like, okay, so we have cleansed everything, right? Like, so what is the next step look like? What do the next three steps look like? How do we come out of this and steal Nassim Taleb, right? How do we become anti-fragile and build resiliency into the system? by acknowledging that this was going to happen. It's happened to everything before. It will happen to the next thing.
Yeah.
How do we turn the sow's ear into a purse?
Yes.
What a lovely phrase.
Yes.
And you're the one from Texas, so where the hell am I getting that? I'm from New
Dude,
Jersey.
I've never heard that phrase in my life.
No way.
A
So
sow's ear into a purse? Like, I don't know what that even means. We slaughter cattle in Texas. We pigs are kind of an afterthought. Let me say this. I don't think we have not reached our nadir just quite yet. Like, I still think that there is a bit of burning that needs to happen. I think that, again, when I look at what I see, and again, my lens is I'm part of this aspirational, program team that's trying to still put on a decent show, later in July. So I'm still receiving the, oh my gosh, look at this fire, look at this lovely fire we have here. So I because most of the time it's the posts are usually a couple of flavors. It's, look at this fire. My gosh, it's a glorious fire. Let's all get some marshmallows and watch it, because people are still enjoying the fire a little bit too much. Like, they're watching it grow, going, oh, look at that. I called that. I saw that. I did that. I said this. I meant this. We should all have thought this. And then the other is, oh my gosh, this is bad. This is what everybody, I know you didn't ask for my advice or ask for my opinions, but here's 700 words on it. So I still think we're in you didn't ask for what I thought, but I'm still going to tell you what I think anyways, of what the number of times people have done a screenshot of the letter that Brian Button wrote to the Agile Alliance community saying, please buy tickets.
Yeah.
People are still sharing screenshots of that, going, shame, Agile Alliance, look at what you did. And also, here's my 5 points of what the Agile Alliance needs to do to get things to be better. Again, I'm not on the board. I don't represent the board. I don't know any of that. Like, I'm not in any of those conversations. It's just, I don't like that doesn't tell me that we're at our lowest point just quite yet. We're still watching the fire build. Is that fair?
could be. Jay, you've talked about, I forget if you did a podcast or if we just had conversations about mimetic desire and how the social algorithms are feeding on that. And so what we all see in LinkedIn is driven by the algorithms to encourage engagement. And what encourages engagement this day is pouring more gasoline on the fire, right? It's like, just what do you, it used to be on the TV news. What led? The fire. The local news was the fire, the car crash. And so there's something about our human nature that draws us to that, which is extremely negative, but engaging. And that's part of the problem. Now, there's an equal number of people that are doing positive things. Jay, you talked to Burroughs about his new book, about conversations. We've talked with Jason Little and Ken Rickard about big ideas. All these thought leaders aren't piling on Agile is dead, the narcissism of small differences, not, my framework is better than your framework. There's a lot of promising stuff out there. I just don't know how I hate to say market it, but tap into it. There's so many positive things.
Let me ask both of you your opinion on this. What do you feel like is representative of that, right? Like, what is, so we try, again, every Agile podcast or a podcast that's even closely related to the work that we do probably says the same thing. Like, we try to be part of elevating the conversation. We try to bring more positivity, more high-mindedness, right? Like, we're talking about the Agile Alliance letter in a way without actually, bringing it up a whole lot. And we're trying to be high-minded about this, right? But in your mind, like, Jay, what does making it better look like to you or sound like to you? Like, maybe we should have a conversation of, this might help, and then people can say, I don't think it'll help, or I will think it'll help, and let's have that conversation. So what does the conversation getting better look like to both of you?
So what does the conversation look like getting better?
Is it saying more? Is it saying less? Is it just we have to drown out the naysayers? Like,
I think it's, well, in order to change the narrative, you have to change the stories told within the narrative. So we need to have more, we need to elevate the voices of the people, or bring more attention to the people who are not doom and gloom, not celebrating the fire, but saying, look, it is what it is. How are we gonna make hay while the sun is shining, right? So that means I'm not gonna say if it goes back to if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all, right? Don't go on the internet and talk a whole bunch of shit. I mean, you're not helping anybody. Maybe you feel better. Maybe that assuages your ego, right? Maybe you feel like, oh, I've arrived because I told you so. I told you so. You may be right, but at the end of the day, that's not making it better, right? I think, well, in theory, the what needs to happen is the people who are truly invested in making the turn and making this into something better. We need to find each other. We need to lean on each other, and truly, to use your term, drown out. We do need to drown out we need to change the narrative by generating positive stories, right? We need to change the narrative by the people who are interested in doing this thing and making this thing really work. We need to find a way to get them together.
Yeah.
There's two parts to it, because there's the cohort that you just described, Jay, the people doing the work, and then there's the people funding the services. So the buyer persona, the C-suite, that is now risk adverse and is no longer spending millions on, quote, the transformation, right? I don't know that we're having good conversations with that buyer persona.
I don't think we're having the conversation at all. I think that I think that every comment that you see, the buyers are not posting their thoughts on LinkedIn. Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't see senior executive leaders who are funding these transformations or the work, whatever it is. I don't think they're the ones speaking up. Is that fair?
That's fair. They're not engaging in the conversation. They're also not the ones going to the conferences in person or online, that the consumers of these frameworks and ideas are going to. So we might not be at the same pub drinking from the same kegs.
Yeah. So to your point, Marvin, you had the interesting layers of, okay, so who are we trying to change the narrative for? I actually think we need to get our ducks in a row and not provide a unified front, but we need to get ourselves, us practitioners, us who are in this impacted population.
Sure.
We need to get our stuff together and present that unified front outwards. Because imagine you're lurking, right? Imagine you're lurking. You're one of these late entrants to the game, and you see all these agile practitioners taking pot shots, right? Or all these people talking shit to one another. Because the first thing you do when somebody applies is you pull up their LinkedIn profile and you see what they post and they comment on who they follow. And you get a pretty good read about what kind of person's like. And I'm not here to chastise anybody, do your thing. But I don't understand how that's positive. And I can be as cynical as the day is long, and I can take my pot shots, but you don't put that shit out publicly, right? We need to change the narrative amongst ourselves and say, look, this is the way, celebrating the fire, right? The ash, right? We're not worshiping the ashes. We're celebrating the fire because it gives us a chance of opportunity. Those of us that are like-minded, like the Mike Burroughs, right? Like the guys who were, I'm going to use the example of the guys who were always at the fringes of the Agile movement, who were in the orbit, but not necessarily in the gravity well, right? So the guys like the Mike Burroughs and the Steve Tennants and the Peter Merrills and the people who were always on the Jürgens, Apollo, who were on the fringes, like trying new ideas. I think those are the people that we find a way to coalesce that, if we're going to use those people, or we find the new Jürgen, the new Mike Burroughs, right? And put those people together and have them march the dialogue forward.
So the manifesto is going to be saved by all the European countries that don't believe in capitalism as much as the US.
I honestly think the manifesto, I think
that was a joke.
Is what it is. I'm going to be completely honest. I think the manifesto is what it is. It was at a point in time.
Sure.
The world is way different than it was when it was written 20-something years ago. Let's acknowledge that. We don't need to change the manifesto. We don't need a new manifesto. We don't need a manifesto at all. What we need to do is start building a narrative that will allow us to grow into ways that, that surprise even all of us. Now, I know there needs to be Dave Soto, when at this point he would show up and say, well, you need some sort of enabling constraint in order to kind of force the conversation going in a certain way, which is fine. We'll find that. But for now, it's the fire happened. Those are the ashes. It was a good run while it lasted. This is the cycle of life. How do we make it move going forward?
That's totally fair. I mean, trust me, Jay, if I could give everybody one gummy vitamin in the community that had a dose of anything, it's humility. Like, our community needs, you want to talk about coming together, we need a big old slice of humble pie. And unfortunately, we're being served it. We're in the middle of being, and trust me, we haven't even reached the crust yet of this humble, like we have a long way to go because we're still, the age-old argument of you ask 5 Agile coaches and get 30 opinions and answers, like, those chickens have come home to roost, because, like, you talked about how we can't seem to find any unanimity or unifying force in the in the community is probably why we're struggling to find work right now. It's like I'm tired of hiring an Agilist and not getting a straight answer from you all. I'm tired of there being 20 answers to something and nothing else has ever, like PMI has never sold itself that way, and or any of the other stuff, right? So again, we were struggling why people won't hire us. So it's because they can't get a straight answer from us about anything.
It depends.
I'm gonna build on I'm gonna build on that point. I think what we need, my thought is we need to unify and find this new thing. There will come a time where we can stop and look backwards and say, okay, what did we do wrong? How did we mess it up? And it might be the, hey, it depends. It might be the, hey, coaches were never responsible for delivering anything, so they were kind of looked at as a luxury. And then when money stops, you don't get a new job. When money's tight at home, you don't get a new job. You cut spending. We will do that, and we should have that conversation because that conversation is necessary. And I understand the argument that we need to have that now in order to prevent doing it going forward. You're not going to prevent it because this is what happens. This is the circle of life, right? But I just quoted the fucking Lion King. God bless me. But my point being is we shouldn't spend too much time looking that way. We need to look this way, right? To your point, Murman, I don't think we've hit the nadir yet. I think you're right. I think there's going to be one or two more.
We're still too navel gazing right now.
Well, there's going to be one or two more until we truly find the new thing, right?
I hope it's single digits. Hey,
Yeah.
I'm loving this conversation. I'm going to run the transcript through AI and find out how many cliches, metaphors, and analogies we've used, because
Not any more than usual. Definitely not more than usual.
So yes, I love looking forward, but there's this environmental headwind that we're facing that's coming to roost. Mixed metaphors, right? We've got the quarterly earnings call that our buyers are dealing with. We can't demonstrate any ROI on the Agile. The timeline to effective change is years, if not, it's not quarters. It's multiple years, 3 to 5 years, but the average tenure of the buyer is 18 months. The failure rate is fucking huge, right? And so who in their right mind in the decision making is going to accept the risk of doing yet another $1 million engagement to hire, quote, experts that don't tell you any fucking advice? Because that's what we've ended up doing.
The macroeconomic world that we're in right now, nobody can afford to take the luxury. Nobody's got the luxury of the flyer.
Right. So it goes back to do it the old ways.
Well, to be fair, when
it's a retreat,
when interest rates change and the economy changes, and whoever, which has nothing to do with the election, whenever the economy turns around, there will be all kinds of flyers being thrown around, and you might see people taking a stab at whatever they decide to call transformation next. Like, trust me, there will be another thing, and people will take flyers again. Again, the problem comes in of, what are we doing? Like, literally, what are we doing? I mean, Jay, our podcast about our favorite command and control book, we talked about this. Like, change took even longer back then. Like, the amount of time you spent, years to get like 5 people better or 40 people better. Taylor spent years trying to just improve the way that one person, hauled pig iron around, so like, again, Agile has highlighted, A, how hard it is to change, B, it takes time to change. And unfortunately, some companies aren't that patient. In fact, most of them aren't. There are a few that have. And when we say a few companies, we just mean slivers of those companies, right? So success has to be viewed with a certain amount of lens to say, like, is it ever even possible to get better or work? You know what I mean? Like, we've never asked these questions before. And thankfully, like, we've been a part of it. This 20 years of nonsense has had to ask us some really tough. Can you imagine when we first became Agilists talking about mental health? You know what I mean? Like, so it's progressing. It's just not fast enough for anybody to say we were successful.
If you had told me when I was first getting into this, whatever the hell we call what we do, that waterfall would still be around and thriving when Agile is starting to take the turn, I probably would have laughed at you and said, get serious. And yet here we are. So not trying to look backwards, but when we get to that point, we should look at answering the question of, how has PMI been able to be so resilient when you have a new operating paradigm introduced in the iterative way of working in Agile, whatever you want to call it, which is provable at the team level to work well. How come they've stuck around and we're flailing like the Titanic is going down? That's there's definitely, I think, some insights there to be gleaned.
So yes, it works at the team level, but the nature of the things that we're building today or have been building for the last 20 years have been incredibly complex and having to have teams of teams work together. The reason PMI has been so successful is they have um, tapped into the hearts and minds of the buyers. Yes, we can be predictable. Yes, we can control budget. It was all bullshit. It didn't work, but they appeal to the buyers' command and control instincts.
Is that
They
really
never
what
let
they're selling? I think that
the
PMI has been
PMI.
I
I
think
think
PMI has
so.
been resilient because it's across multiple industries and it's
That's
concepts
true.
that can apply to really like I mean we can joke, but like PMI will outlast Scrum Alliance and Scrum.org in a mighty way. But it hasn't. I don't think it has to do with the fact that our Taylor buddy and the concepts that his book supposedly press, but don't actually like. That's not the reason why the PMI is around. I don't think that the buyers or anything. I just think it's multiplied across multiple industries, and there are concepts that realistically, if there was an organization that could take agile concepts and apply them to multiple industries, which there have been many attempts, and it's been very, very difficult to work outside of IT. But to be fair, if we could get it, if we could get agility outside of IT to replicate like project management has, I think there would be an organization that lasts. I
You
just
know,
don't think it's happening.
I am adjacent to agility in the educational arena. It is thriving in private education, but not in public. Again, because of the constraints of public education and the frame and decision making and blah 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 blah. We've seen stories and seen adoption of agile in marketing groups at scale, not just a small 3-person marketing practice. So it has been applied elsewhere. Shit, I've got a daughter who's in the space industry. Talk about hardware, software that is doing rapid agile development, going
Sure.
from 6 months to 3 months to 6 weeks to like, oh, we can turn that around in 6 hours. So it has applicability in these other
I do not
arenas,
doubt
but
that.
it's so small in its adoption, and the success stories aren't as widespread as the failure stories.
I could see it. I could see like it would be really interesting if like we could put Martin Fowler and Bloom in a room and see like what kind of magic they could create in this magical world where they were both, around at the exact same time. But like I don't it's nice to think about all that, but again, right, we have the word that describes our movement is a very common English word that gets used to describe a lot of things, and it's branding. It's how do we unify these ideas inside of IT and outside of IT? How do we get like the multiple regulatory boards that we would need to buy along with it? Like there are so many hurdles to for Agile to become what project management has, just because there's a variety of reasons, and I don't even think it's fair to compare the two organizations at this point in time. They're after different things.
uh, I mean, this is for the retrospective when we look back at how PMI has lasted, and
That we're
we
totally not doing right now.
right. I mean, yeah, I guess if there was, and I know I've taken up a half hour here. I guess my want, my hope would be that we stop doom and glooming it. We stop sitting here either enjoying the flames or oh my god, there's flames, and really start saying, okay, well now what? And we concentrate the dialogue around, okay, well, how do we build something to help each other? Right? I mean, there's a ton of practitioners either out of work or looking for work. There's a ton of practitioners who've been impacted. It's terrible. And to your point, I think we sadly may get one or two more bumps like that. There'll be time for doom and gloom, and that time is later, right? Doom and gloom doesn't pay bills. Doom and gloom helps you feel sorry for yourself. I understand the Kubler-Ross stages of grief. I wish that we could all come together and say, okay, look, let's pool our resources. Let's work to find the next thing or create the next thing, and then let's go that way. And rare moment of optimism for me. I guess I'm over caffeinated and too much sugar.
It is strange that you're the positive one.
I'll be negative for a moment. So you talked, Jay, a little bit about the early days and your enthusiasm. I can't imagine being a entry level Scrum Master, product owner, even SPC, let alone junior developer, looking for work right now, or considering this as a potential career path.
Sure.
Right. So the next generation, shit, nobody's signing up to be a Scrum Master in this world. right? Nobody wants to go be an agile coach in this world. So
Oh my
I forget where I'm going in this. Even the
Could you
experienced
imagine
people.
what you would do, Jay? Like what would you if someone walked up to you in the hallway, right, of your office and grabbed you and said, "I'm so excited. I'm taking my first ever coaching training class." Like what how do you keep your face from making
Yeah. Tell
face
me what my career is going to be like, Uncle Jay.
like my face what it's doing right now is what I would probably do. I would be like, what are you doing?"
Yeah, I mean, it really depends. I guess it really depends who's saying it. Like if they're all excited, oh my god, I'm taking an ACC class. I'm stoked. I would say, well, I'm stoked for you. I'm stoked
Right.
for you because that's learning. That's learning. And
Yeah.
then I would
Right
ask,
answer.
well, what do you want to do with it? What do you want to do with it?
I want to change the world. I want to make it, more humane
Sure.
as a workplace.
Sure. Hope you can write code.
Yeah, yeah. Learn prompting.
Well, that's better than writing code,
Yeah,
right,
yeah.
Murman?
So
As a junior developer, you're not going to write code anymore.
I don't
No.
How do
want
you
to.
get, mommy, tell me where senior developers come from, right? They don't come from junior developers because there's not going to be any.
Andy, that is a whole different show in and of itself. Companies' reluctance to hire juniors and train them up or hire neophytes and help them develop their skills. We just go for the seniors. We're going to be COBOL again in the banking system. It would be hard for me not to be cynical, and I want to
What do
dash.
you mean again, like we quit in the first place?
Like I don't want to dash the young professionals' hopes, but at the same time, I do think a little bit of realism could help. And
Sure. To be
like,
fair, like again, to be fair, I have teenagers. You know, Andy, you've got daughters that are a little older
20s.
than mine. They don't. The three of us sound like old fogies in a way that I can't even describe with human words. Like we are like this is like the next generation, they do not care about any of this stuff. They hear our complaints and we're like, "Oh, you're used to writing code out with your fingers, old people. That's adorable." Like
Tell me
I
about the
heard
punch
you.
cards again, Daddy.
Sure. Yeah. You remember how we made fun of the punch cards for our parents and stuff? Like that we are that now. We are that. Wait, oh, that's adorable, Dad. You type the entire word out when you text me good morning. Like, oh, that's amazing. Like they don't care about any of this stuff. There is another path through this, which is why again, agility, which is based on other great ideas, which came before that, which is based on great ideas before that, and some of them are in Taylor's book. I'm sorry to keep spoiling it for you all. There will be something else. Like these ideas make sense because they make sense. You know, like psychology is psychology for a reason. And it's just the packaging, and again, because people made a lot of money off of these concepts and manifestos and things, and people got a lot of notoriety. I worked really hard to get to the place where I was in the community. And I'm asking myself, like, yeah, but all of my LinkedIn followers are not getting me more jobs. Like all my blog posts and podcasts that I've done, nobody's like, I can't wait to hire that person anymore. That's just not the way it is. We have to change.
Was it ever that way? Did those channels reach the people that
Yes.
wanted to hire us?
Yes. Yes. I the Andy, you and I, you know this better, just as well, if not better than I do. The number of jobs that I've gotten because people saw me speak at a conference somewhere, read something that I wrote, or heard something that I said. The number of people that were aware of me, several jobs and
Yeah,
contracts.
I imagine that's probably the case if I'm suffering from recency bias, that I don't know that quote target audience is paying attention to
No,
me or
not
those
anymore.
channels it's
Not
targeting.
anymore. No, but there was a time. The 2010s definitely was that time.
Yeah. So what the hell happened?
People aren't buying anymore. I mean, is that fair? I mean, they're not buying it as much. Let me be glass half full about something. They're not buying it as much, right? Like agility is still selling in some way, shape, or form. It's just not selling as much. It's not selling for as much money. And people are putting less faith in the idea of quote unquote transformation, whatever you want to define that as. And that can be defined 100 different ways. It's
As
just not
as
happening.
agile can, right?
I think I'm going to posit that the reason why that past corpus of work is not generating leads going forward is there is no longer interest in the center of that corpus of work, which takes us back to the whole agile coaching, right? Like a lot of us define
Right.
ourselves as agile coaches, and the tide went out and it took the coaches with them, and now there's nobody on the beach looking for a coach. So
Mm-hmm.
I hope that
And if
doesn't
they
come
had a
apart.
coach, they had a poor
There's-
experience with one, or they're too expensive, or
Well, I also think
whatever.
the money's also waiting on the sidelines, right? Like I also think there's companies sitting on war
It's all
chests
going
going,
to AI now.
well, yeah. What do we want to invest in next? Where do we want to go? I mean, I definitely, to your point, I definitely think the balkanization of our industry helped accelerate its demise. Like I'm going to go back to the PMI example, right? Gatekeep the things you love. It's terrible. Like, people don't like to hear that, but you got to gatekeep the things you love, right? And we've talked about the whole, what is it? The mops, the geeks, the mops, and the sociopaths, and how trends move and stuff. We had so much balkanization. There were so many different opportunities that we had such a high surface area. That surface area became so thin, the holes were easy to poke, right? So give Jay a magic wand and say, Jay, how do I fix this agile ship before it goes completely under the water? You go to Scrum Alliance, you go to scrum.org, you go to Agile Alliance, you say all three of you are merging in the next 90 days. You're going to come up with a unified front. Everything gets put under one roof, and then you work at that going forward. It's in time, Black Plague, right? Times are tough. Medieval Europe, right? Dark Ages. This is where countries come from, right? Groups band together for protection, for safety, for sustenance, for survivability. Why wouldn't we think about these sort of things? Yeah, that's probably bonkers. And I guarantee you somebody from each one of those groups just heard me say that and say, is he out of his fucking mind? Well, we
Right.
get revenue from this. We get to do this. It doesn't matter. Right? What is there's the old saying, would you rather be roughly right or precisely wrong? I'd rather be roughly right and survive. You're giving me a magic one. That's what I'm thinking we need to do. It's stop the warfare. We need to go.
It begs the question of, so the proverbial question, Jay, and that is, what does survival look like? If we want to talk about keeping, so we, at the very beginning, we talked about keeping the flame lit or preserving the fire, right? Like, what does survival look like for us? Does that mean that there's one unified, like, because some people would say there's, I mean, you could argue if Jeff and Ken can find a way to at least agree on what the Scrum Guide says, there's possibility for anybody in our community to find a way to get along. Those two, I cannot think, again, I don't, there's possibility for coming together. I just don't see it happening. So I don't know that coming together is really what survival.
You're right. So you're right. It's probably not going to happen. And then all these orgs are going to go the way of the dodo, right? So you want to create something that outlives you, right? You want to create something that,
or maybe we let the shirts and certs go and say it was never really about that.
yeah, I mean, maybe. I mean,
A lot of money was made there.
yeah, I mean, and I don't fault anybody who was able to get their pound of flesh out of the system while it was working for them, right? God bless you and good on you. But what does survival look like?
We all three have made money, maybe in some way, shape, or form off of this agile popularity, right? Like,
yeah,
I don't see another path to making the money that I'm used to making right now without the manifesto and it becoming quote unquote cool. Right?
So you asked Murman, what does survival look like? Define survival, right? I would think, let me take this out here. Survival is purposefulness for all of those that wish to find it in delivering what we can do for each other and for our corporate customers. Purposefulness, right? I'm going to make that false equivalency.
So the idea is being preserved in a way that they can still be accessed by whoever wants to.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I don't know, maybe what does survival look like? I mean, so I keep going back to, it was your example or Andy's example of a young professional passing me in the hallway, right? Like, I mean, as good stewards, it's up to us to build something that will live on past us. It will take on a life of its own, but it will also provide value and purpose for others. That's what a good steward is. That old quote about, planting trees on the shade under which you will never sit, right? Like this is very philosophical, but that's how I think. Like, I want something bigger than me. I want to go to my grave knowing that I left maybe I didn't make a dent in the universe, maybe a nudge or a smudge on the box of the universe, but I think that's what we should be moving towards, right? Like, let's build that thing. And I don't know.
Andy, what do you think? What does survival sound like to you?
It sounds like the sirens going past. I don't know if my pick them up. Like, it's not a fire, it's not an emergency. I think the path forward is what we use it every day. I can't see really big, Jay, like you are. I'm thinking like leaving that legacy. It is every day, every week, making small bets and getting rapid feedback. It's the stuff we've learned so much and we've tried. It's micro shifts. It's not big shifts. Nobody's going to make huge shifts. There's got to be coherence, which is really fucking hard in the systems we're working at. And we just have to You talked about trees, Jay. We have to nurture that ecosystem. We're never going to see the rainforest that is produced. But if we do all those small things as a community with the thought leaders, not trying to cash in, but to try to make a fucking good difference in this world,
Yeah.
I think there's some hope that tomorrow and next week we'll find a little more joy in what we're doing.
Yeah. We probably need to,
Survival hope.
well, I don't,
Hope is the strongest of the human emotions.
so
Without-
I think that's how I guess my personal definition of survival is kind of in that vein of trying to be hopeful. Like, because right now, if you look at the skills that are on our resumes, I think that they're viewed as very specialized, very difficult to fit into a lot of the other roles that we would absolutely excel in organizations. But because we've been in the agile camp for so long, to me, survival is, they look at my agility skills that I've learned from being a scrum master, product owner, coach, trainer, facilitator, whatever of all those skills that I have. When someone sees them on there and they go, man, I would love to have all of those skills in this role over here. To me, that is what survival of agility is to say your skills matter, because I don't see the community. I don't see IT looking at what we brought as agilists, don't see that and then go, I want more of that in my organization. That's my struggle right now. That's my own personal soapbox. And I think that's what getting better looks like.
But if we put a pin right there, there's many more conversations that can be had. Thank you both, Jay, Chris, for getting up early this morning and working through our inventory of analogies, metaphors, and cliches. They were fantastic. I think, as I said, we'll get some stickers out of this one.
The upcoming omnibus of all of our mixed metaphors will be quite the read.
We're going to need a user's guide and a glossary, right?
Thank you for sticking in there, listeners. If you enjoyed this show, do the usual. Give us a thumbs up, give us a comment. It still helps our audience grow. Subscribe, get the next one. And if you're really brave, become a patron for less than a cup of coffee a month.
I dare you to
some good
outspend me.
Indeed.
I'll send you some stickers and socks. I got some sitting around.
The combo pack, stickers and socks. I love it. So thank you very much. This is the Agile Uprising.